In this tutorial, we have to understand the terms function, domain, and range. When do we call the function one-to-one and when do we call it many-to-one? A function is a special mapping such that every element of set A, the domain, is mapping to exactly one element of set B, the range. As we have said before, that mapping is the transform from one set to another set. Set A, the domain, to set B that we form it, which is the range. So, we can consider the equation as function or not if every element in set A is mapping to exactly one element in set B. For example, y equal 2x. Y is the range and x is the domain. Let's represent this equation on the mapping diagram. Set A, which is the x domain, and set B, which is the y, the range. If we consider the values of x to be 1, 2, and 3, we need to determine the new set that is the y. First, y equal 2x. This means 2 times x. When the x is 1, this means that 2 times 1 is 2. So the first value of y is 2. Now when we substitute the x by 2, 2 times 2 is 4. So when the x is 2, the y will be 4. The third value, when x is 3, 2 times 3 is 6. So the third value, x is 3 and y is equal to 6. And we should not forget the arrows that represent the mapping diagram. Now let's take a look at another example where y squared equal x. As we have said, y is the range and x is the domain. Here I need to determine the range. In other words, I need to determine the equation y in terms of x. This means I need to get rid of the square from y. But in order to get rid of the square, we know that square root cancels the square. This means that the square root and the square cancel each other. In this case, to determine the y, I have to square root both sides. So, I will get this form. As we have said, the square and square root cancel each other, and I will get y equal square root of the x. Now let's take another example. Let x be 4. We need to find the value of y. And we said y equals square root of x, which means the square root of 4. And we know that the square root of any number has two solutions. It's plus or minus. Why? Because, for example, when I square the minus, it becomes positive or plus, and when I square the positive, also it gives me positive plus sign. That's why the square root of any number could be positive or negative. So the square root of 4 could be either plus 2 or minus 2, and in this case we have two solutions. And we have said that the function is every element of A that has exactly one element of B. But here I have for every input there is two outputs, and in this case it's not a function, which means y squared equal x is not a function. We have two kinds of functions. I have one-to-one and I have many-to-one. This means that the function could be one-to-one, that is, every input has exactly one output, or many-to-one, which means that many inputs have exactly one output. A good way to remember this is, as we have said, one-to-one, which means that every element in set A has exactly one element in set B. Also, the second type, many-to-one, which means that more than one input has one output. And the last one, when I have one input that has more than one output. In this case, it is not a function. So in the function, the output can have more than one input, whereas the input cannot hold more than one output.